Welcome back, Internet, to Perfect Faraday. I'm your host, Jeremiah, and across from me here is George Merchant. What do you want to talk about today, George?
I want to talk about talking, man.
Yeah?
Yeah. I want to talk about talking.
Well, let's talk about talking for a little while, eh?
I think that might be a good idea, eh? I think our northern neighbors, they got a few laws that we don't have. I'm glad for that.
How about you come over here, eh? And let's hash it out word to word.
Yeah.
Like men.
Yeah.
How's your mother? Is she well?
She's doing good. She well. She was doing good. Yes.
It's good to hear.
Yeah. So, what we wanted to talk about today was freedom of speech. Actually, I think that it's the First Amendment. It's the one that everybody seems to know most of all, and it seems to be a hot topic right now.
People are aware of it. I wouldn't say that they're necessarily knowledgeable about what it means. So.
I think most people are fairly knowledgeable about what the First Amendment means. I think that there's a lot of confusion around what laws you can make about it. So let's just jump right into it. We'll just read the First Amendment. Let's start this up by reading the First Amendment here.
Okay.
So, First Amendment here. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So it's not just speech. You know what I mean? There's a little bit more there. Peaceable assembly, redress of grievances, petitioning the government. So
that's weird. I don't see anything out in there that says don't let people that I don't like what they're saying can't say what they feel in there.
Yes. So this is what people have to realize is that this is actually specifically restricting the government. That's what that's what our Constitution is about. It's not just spelling out the role of the government. What it's doing is it's saying what the government can't do.
Yeah.
And recently we found out, for those who have been paying attention to the news, that the government was working, no surprise to anybody, the government was actually working with big tech to censor people's speech and their expression. So when you do that, you have a violation. You have a direct violation because the government is involved. It's not the same as saying, like, in your workplace you have free speech. Well, that's not true. If a customer comes in your store and you cuss out the customer for whatever reason, you know what I mean, and you get fired for it, you can't then go and say, well, I that's against my free speech rights. Well, no, that's not against your free speech rights. You're working at a job, okay? That's not the same as my freedom of expression, and the government's not the one that's doing it.
Yeah.
So what the government did is they backdoored it all, and they worked with companies to align the messaging according to what they wanted, right? So they downranked stuff, shadow banned stuff, outright banned stuff, and we saw this in the last election. It had a great impact on it according to a bunch of people. I don't really know if it did or not. According to a bunch of polls, apparently, it would have shifted the vote. The Hunter Biden laptop story, for those people that don't know, it was suppressed and people were banned for sharing it, stuff like that. We don't know for certain if that would have really affected the outcome. We can't say that definitively.
Maybe it's still,
Yeah, we can't say that definitively. So
Trump was so polarizing that it's just as easy. People,
I think that there was
people just didn't want him out.
I think there was a strong hate vote. Yep. Yeah.
So going back to the free speech thing, and I know that it did say of expression too.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And that's kind of what I wanted to get into.
Yeah.
Too.
Right. So that falls into going back to the business thing. You have the right to fire an employee because they're using explicatives or whatever, right?
Yeah, for whatever reason, actually, to be honest with you, in most states,
Yeah.
you know, so.
So does the business owner have the right to turn away a customer just because they don't believe in something that they do, like, you know, the gay wedding cakes and stuff?
Okay,
like issues.
yeah, that's a hot topic too. That's a
Yeah.
hot topic. See, that's been debated a lot in the courts. Okay, that's been definitely gone a lot back in the court because what you have is you have one person's rights running into like another person's potential rights. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
potential rights or whatever. Because
And that one like directly maps because
Yeah.
it's the government stepping in and saying you can't turn them away because I mean there is consumer rights, right? But
yeah,
there is also rights for, although it seems like they're trying to erode them in certain states, that you know that I can deny you service for whatever reason. I mean that
Yeah.
is like a right of a business in a lot
Yeah.
of places, you know.
yeah, and sometimes you'll see signs on. Yeah, I remember used to seeing them all the time. I don't
I
think I've
mean,
seen
we,
one in
we
a
saw
long
it a lot of
time.
places. Don't, you know, during 2019, 2020, don't wear masks, don't come in here, right? You
Yep,
know?
yep. And there was no legal basis. They couldn't be forced on you.
Yeah.
The government couldn't force that on you.
Yeah,
but-
except for the basic, like,
Yeah.
understanding that you can turn away a customer for whatever reason you want. But
Yeah.
that's why I bring this up. So,
So so the business, if you didn't like that, you would choose to go somewhere else. You know,
Yeah.
you just choose to go somewhere else. But to get back to your question there, the going back to the business when you have one person's rights running into another one's potential rights, maybe yes, maybe no. So what you have is you've got this sort of situation here where it's like, okay, you know, my rights, you know, only extend so far, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I can't go and do certain things. I can own a gun, but I can't carry a gun in a bank. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. It's a little bit easier in that example. But when you start talking about freedom of expression and religion is actually, you know, in this as well. So you have a cake maker. Everyone's probably heard the story by now. You have a cake maker who's a religious person who says, I don't support these things. And from the story, from what I understand, he wasn't being hateful. He was actually like saying, no, it's my religious belief. I just can't condone this. I can't like make money condoning this kind of thing. And, you know, but I'll bake you whatever you want to or anything like that, you know, outside of that. But, and that runs into the rights of, like you run into like civil rights issues, right? Where it's like, hey, you can't discriminate. Well, there's a problem there. There's a little bit of a problem there is that the person's, whether you find it good, bad, disgusting, or whatever, it's like, well, this person has a First Amendment right.
yeah.
So how the Supreme Court views this really a lot of times comes along ideological lines in how they view the Constitution.
Yeah.
Okay? So originalists would most certainly side with the cake maker. Okay?
Yeah.
They would say that no, this man has because they're originalists. There was no civil rights laws, you know, back then in the writing of the Constitution. So they would say, okay, well, this was definitely written, whether we like it or we don't, like it does protect, you know, their freedom of religion and expression to say no to whomever they want to, and then and you know, carry out the religion in their way as long as it doesn't cause harm to another. And I would argue that as long as that person has access to, and it's not a monopoly or something like that, as long as that person had access to other businesses, then that would be like, you know, the person's religious right would, in that case, would end up winning out.
I mean, I
This
guess,
is a very special case, though. I mean,
yeah, well, it's not so special. Like, depending on, like you said, you know, if they didn't have access to anywhere else, that's where, you know, we got into trouble in the past, you know, and we had to have, you know, with the civil rights.
Oh, yeah.
and
Oh,
that,
definitely.
you know. So
And
that is a really interesting, thing to think about, because you can't trample on other people's rights. But going back to the cake example, a lot of places like I worked somewhere where they made cakes. I worked in a deli and they made cakes opposite of me, but there were certain things that they would say, no, we can't put that on a cake. I mean, obviously copyrighted stuff. When I worked in photo, the same kind of thing. We couldn't print copyrighted stuff. But they asked us not to print out people's nudes either. But they had a right to have their nudes, but we had a right as a business not to sell it to them. You know? So that's like a similar thing too, But if the person identified as a nudist, am I like stepping on their First Amendment rights to express themselves there,
Yeah, because you won't conduct that business with them.
Yeah.
In support of that.
Yeah.
See, and that's where you can't compel, because if you compel people, that's not free speech. You are stepping all over their rights then. Okay.
Yeah.
I find compelled speech to be so extreme, and up in Canada, the laws that they passed surrounding identity laws and stuff like that, and what they call hate speech and stuff. It's compelled speech. It's a compelled speech thing. You can get fined. You can go to jail if you don't honor the desired titles and pronouns or whatever of another person, and
Isn't there,
it creates a very strange.
Isn't there some places in gosh, I can never say it, the EU?
Yeah, Britain,
that are like that too, that are pushing for that. Like I can't remember. There was like.
Oh, they already passed it.
I watched a little, like 20 minutes or so. I think it was in Ireland or Scotland. I can't remember. It was one of the two. Like where a guy was thrown in jail, like because I guess he stepped in to defend somebody else that like had said something, out in a public area. I can't remember the exact details, but he was like, hey, like he has a right to do that. But then they like jailed him for a time or whatever, because he was like stepping in trying to defend,
And this authoritarian sort of attitude in the Western countries definitely been on the rise in the last few years. And that the whole attitude where people can compel you to do things, compel you to speech, make you, just do, things because it's their moral ideology is completely anti-constitutional. It just stomps all over their rights. So several years back, people were burning flags. I guess some people still do or whatever, but I haven't seen it as much. And people were stomping on the flag. They were burning the flag, defecating on the flag.
It just doesn't have the impact anymore.
The shock values wore off or whatever because
not as many people respect the flag as
not as many people respect the flag. And then there's also a lot of us that are just like, we know how to like make that go away. We ignore it.
Yeah.
We ignore it. We don't give it power. That's the way you make those things go away. But so a lot of that was happening on the left, and the right was responding for a little while to it. And it was, you'd see the news articles and Fox News and everything, and the right wing was saying, oh, these flags and everything like that. And I, as much as it disgusts me, and it does disgust me, I served in the military. My wife served in the military. My entire family has served in the military. And I see that, and I do see that as a direct disrespect to those who have died, who have served and died, and what that flag represents.
Yeah.
Because they gave of themselves for your right to do that. You know what I mean? To express yourself how you ever see fit, and if long enough as it's your flag, that's actually protected. And to me, it's hate speech.
Yeah.
Okay. It is hate speech. You're desecrating and stomping all over something that's almost next to a religious, sort of belief. This is the country you love and where you're born in. This is your culture. This is your cultural values. And when other people disrespect it like that and go to those extremes, it doesn't feel good. It's like it's gross. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
But it's their right to do it.
Yeah.
It's their right to do it, and I'll defend their right to do it, even though I find it disgusting.
I thought one of the interesting things, like since I moved here, was the Colin Kaepernick thing, right?
Yeah, that's a nuanced issue.
Yeah, it's pretty nuanced, but you know, he knelt for what he felt was right, and he had every right to do that. I'm not defending him, you know. Don't get me that way.
Yeah, yeah. And the NFL could have fired him if they wanted to.
Yeah.
The NFL could have fired him.
So many people like just went to the other extreme instead of just respecting that he had a different point of view, right? You know, or maybe on the right, and that it became a whole thing, right? And if they'd just been like, okay, I respect that he has the right to do that, but I'm not going to give it power, you know, because like what did it tumble into? It just became a whole thing that I would say it was one of the precursors to a whole movement that
and then
saw cities burned to the ground.
You know? I would agree. I would agree, and I think George Floyd was the torch that was thrown on that pile of gasoline.
Yeah.
I just this whole build up to it and everything, and I did not find what he did to be hate speech. Some people might though. Some people might interpret that as hate speech. You're talking about Kaepernick? Yeah, when he was kneeling and stuff. Yeah. But I don't interpret it that because it is nuanced. Okay. Yeah. I looked into it, you know, and I said, okay, what's going on here?
We'll see. You looked into it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
I looked into it.
That's what a lot of people don't do. They just see a thing and they like listen to the talking heads, you know, giving their opinion without like getting their facts. Think for yourself. That's
exactly
what I like stress all the time. You know, don't
we
just
always
get
finish the show
incited by, you know, emotion, you know, when you hear something.
Yeah.
Do a little research first.
Yeah.
Do a little more research, you know.
Hear the other side of the argument, right?
Yeah.
It's very important to hear the other side of the argument because it gives you all kinds of context.
Yeah.
So, and don't let me forget to tell you about what broke me. Okay. Remind me to
go back to the nuance of Kaepernick.
So the nuance of Kaepernick was, and I didn't find it disgusting anymore after I read into it. I just was like, it's like, oh, okay, well, that's because of his view and what he's seen and what he's been fed and the lens that he's looking through or whatever. But he actually was sitting first.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize that. He was actually sitting first. And that seemed a lot more disrespectful. And me too, actually, you know, like as a veteran, that does seem a lot more disrespectful. And there's a lot of things you do around the flag. There's a lot of sort of saluting the flag, turning towards the flag flying at half mast. We fold flags over coffins. It has a lot of meaning, especially to the veteran. Okay.
Yeah.
And there are times where it's actually flown upside down. There's a whole kind of I'm not saying religious. It's not religious, but there's a
symbolic
tradition.
Tradition.
Yeah, a respected tradition around the flag. So a lot of people really do have a hard time with that. Well, he was sitting first, and then he talked to a military guy that explained the nature of those type of things and why it seemed that was disrespectful. Like that was a whole lot more that seemed to be very disrespectful to the veterans and stuff like that. And he said that it would be much more respectful to kneel.
Yeah.
Okay. You're taking an action. Okay.
Yeah.
And not disrespecting the veteran. And that's why he started kneeling. It's actually why he started kneeling. Okay.
Yeah. And in a way, I guess it could have symbolized him. Like kneeling instead of sitting. Sitting was just outright disrespectful, but kneeling is probably like, I'm kind of disappointed in the country that's supposed to represent me. But
well,
I still partly have respect.
Yeah, he was taking.
He
was taking some action, right?
Yeah.
He was actually taking some action.
Yeah.
Okay. And kneeling. Now, I'm not going to say that I agree with his worldview. Yeah. I'm not going to say that I agree with the whole, lens around that. All cops are out there chasing down black men and the systemic racism and everything like that. I'm not going to say I'm going to agree with that because I don't. I do believe racism exists. I just don't think there's this systemic racism that everybody leans on and tries to go through the vocabulary around that.
I don't
really
necessarily think people sit there and actively. I mean, I do think like some laws in certain states that maybe were overlooked, and some of it.
Oh, I'm sure some of that might still exist out there.
Like people just don't put any thought into when they're doing something.
Yeah, and the after effects of how it affects them and
Yeah.
stuff, and how it affects communities, underserved communities, minority communities,
Yeah.
things like that. Yeah, definitely. There's definitely that. I've noticed that there seems to be a lot of water problems in minority communities.
Yeah.
I mean, there seems to be a problem with these sort of structural issues and stuff. And I don't necessarily point to racism or systemic racism because something bad happened in a minority community, but they do lead to poor outcomes. And I'm not saying I on average I do believe that minority communities do have it rougher. I'm not going to deny that. I'm not going to deny that existence. But
I think the system as it was,
on average,
was probably more racist, and we just have never fixed it. We just want to throw money at the wrong things, right? Instead of actually fixing the problems for
getting down
poor
to
communities, in
getting
general.
Education, fatherlessness in the homes. I mean, there are some core issues there.
Well, like when I lived in Salt Lake, I didn't live in the richest part, but maybe right under that. And,
upper middle class.
The lights would go out. They went out at midnight one time, and they were out there till 3 a.m. fixing it. I guarantee you. Well, I know for a fact. I saw somebody not too long ago. They had no electricity for 3 days, and they lived in kind of the poorer part of the Salt Lake area.
Yep.
So there's
surprise.
that too. And I don't know that that's really racist or not. It's just we're always going to take care of where the money is, right?
It's that power, that monetary power structure. So and when I looked at that, when I looked at the other side of that, I realized I was like, oh, okay. Well, now I view Kaepernick's action a little bit different, and I don't necessarily agree with his worldview, but I didn't find his action so vile. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wasn't gross. And I heard people arguing this stuff back and forth and everything, and I'm like, just look into it. Look into it. And the other part of it is that if no matter what, you still find his action vile, and you may have that view, if you find his action vile, then go ahead and have that view and move on and don't give it power. Because that's how you starve a movement like that. That's how you starve that kind of attention, is you just don't say anything. You just whatever. Yeah. And people stop talking about it because it doesn't get all the clicks. It doesn't get all the responses on social media.
Yeah, I mean,
and
I don't know that that's the best example, but other cases, I wouldn't say just completely ignore something. If you legitimately feel like you can help out in that situation, so why don't you sit down with the person rather than
Well, we're not sitting down with Kaepernick.
No, I know. I'm just saying, I wouldn't say always ignore,
if you have an opportunity.
But don't give power to something that really shouldn't, demand your time. And so what were you saying that broke you? I don't know what you were referring to. But.
So what broke me into, I was raised, my dad said several times growing up, I didn't raise no sheep. I don't want to raise no sheep. That was something, my dad repeated himself about something. It was a point he wanted to get through.
Yeah.
Okay. And, when I was real young, I didn't get what he meant, but I quickly understood what he was talking about.
He wouldn't have to worry about blankets or, jackets if he had raised.
That's right. Bah. So, what happened is that I like to take care of myself. I like to go work out. I try to stay in good health. I don't want to be in the hospital all the time. And there's a family history of some autoimmune disease and a few other things. So I realized, I was like, okay, I got a few things that might be stacked against me. I need to try to take care of myself. I'm not perfect. I'm not overly crazy about it or whatever, but I'm like, hey, I'm willing to sacrifice whatever to be in better health, right? To do my best, to be in better health, to take responsibility for my health as much as I can.
Yeah.
So I'm going to educate myself, everything like that. So I looked into like healthy eating and everything like that, and I tripped across, and I think a lot of people did at this time too, but I tripped across the China study, what they called the China study, and it was basically a study that was done that showed really, really strong support for vegetarianism or veganism.
Okay.
And I said, I'll give it a shot. I was like, I'll give it a shot. It helps my energy levels. I was working shift work at the time, so that was tough and everything like that on me and my body and stuff like that. And I wanted to have more energy, and I wanted to be able to do more. I didn't want to be tired. And so I was like, okay, I'll do this thing. And at first I felt good, actually right at the first I felt really, really good. Then I started feeling pretty poor. I was like, I'm like lost my strength. My energy started plummeting. I realized I had to eat quite frequently to try to keep my energy level up. My teeth started getting loose, and it was just not good. And I was not one of those junk food vegetarians. I mean, I was serious about it. I was eating healthy, whole foods. I was trying to get plenty of protein. And
do you know what supplement they suggest the most for people that choose to be, completely vegan?
God, what is the fish oil or whatever? It might come from something else too, but there was
vitamin D. Is that
no. There's
the omega-3s.
I think so. I think it was omega-3. I can't remember either. I just
a
can't
lot
remember.
of people think it's like iron, right? But you can get a lot of iron from spinach and that. I found out recently, actually, a lot of nutritionists suggest taurine, and that's something I'm taking now. But that's something that you can't get from plant material, and taurine's pretty important for you.
Yeah.
And if you, I started taking it. I'm not, going to Dr. Oz this. It has helped me with certain issues I had. I'm not even going to go into details, but I just found that interesting because I found that out not too long ago when I was like looking at some scientific studies or whatever.
Yeah.
Kind of stumbled across it, but taurine of all things, because it's most people, if you're a meat eater, you don't have to think about it or whatever. Like it's pretty balanced. And I do eat meat, but I guess I had a deficiency in it because I'm noticing differences. It is a pretty interesting compound.
Yeah, it is.
It's an amino. That's one
amino
of the amino
acid.
acids.
Yeah. So what happened was I started feeling pretty terrible, right? But not at first. At first I felt good, but then I started feeling terrible because I was doing this for a while. I mean, a very lengthy period of time. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And I was looking at stuff, and I was making sure I wasn't eating a bunch of junk food and stuff like that or whatever. And I was, I ate a lot of salads, but in those salads I'd have, and I still ate some dairy stuff too or whatever, but I'd have like black beans and things like that or whatever. And I mean, they were good. I mean, I liked what I ate. I tried to make variety and flavor in what I ate and stuff so that I wouldn't get bored and turned off by it and stuff. And as my health started just worsening, I was like, something's not right. I said, okay, George, you read all this data. You looked at this thing scientifically, and you're feeling worse. You felt good for about a month and a half there.
So why do you think you felt good initially?
I think I felt good initially because I think that there is maybe a cleansing effect or detoxifying. I'm eating a lot more fiber.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Part of it's like what we pump into meats,
it could be.
You got off of that, but then your body started needing.
It could be that I was eating maybe I was eating more junk food prior to that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
I know there's other things in meats that's hard to get, through vegetarian diets. And I'm sure very educated vegans can get most everything.
I've seen some people that seemingly seem to be successful at it.
Yeah.
But what opened my eyes though because I read a lot of studies. And so the China study I was reading, I'll go in and I'll read a study. I can read a study.
Yeah.
And I'd go in there and I'd take a look at the study and see what the data says, and I'd be like, oh man, that's a real strong correlation. That's pretty strong data to support this. So, I was like, but when I really started feeling bad, I said, what? I started looking up and I started saying, what are the detractors saying? What is the opposing view saying? What are they saying about this? And it was amazing to me because like right off the bat, it just blew holes in it.
Yeah.
Just blew holes in it, man. They were talking about basically there was a lot of cherry picked data. And what people don't understand the difference is there's studies have a different quality to them. You have like, what's an epidemiological study, and then you have actual like double blind placebo studies.
Yeah.
These are not on the same like value and weight at all. I mean, because when you come to, the epidemiology, you're talking about dealing with sending out like questionnaires and things of that nature, stuff like that.
Yeah.
When you're talking about double-blind placebo studies and everything, that's a lot different.
Oh, yeah.
And then it can become even more controlled, like a clinical study where all factors, or at least all the factors they can control are controlled, and so the quality of these things matter. And they blew holes in the China study, just blew holes in it. And I'm sitting there going, what in the world? It fooled me. It fooled me, and I'm like, I'm not a dumb guy.
Yeah.
I don't consider myself a dumb guy, and most people wouldn't consider me a dumb guy. And I sat there and I looked at all that, and I said, well, it got me. And I've seen a lot of other people. I've seen a lot of other people with high IQs that have been fooled by it as well. That still cite the China study to this day. And I sit there and I look at that and I was like, no, you don't understand. You have not looked at all the data. You actually really not. What you want to do is you want to allow your view to be challenged.
Okay.
You want to get that uncomfortableness when you've settled in on a thought and a way of thinking. You want to be uncomfortable, even if it makes you a little angry or whatever. You want to be challenged because, one, if you are more right, because I think in this world it's impossible to be 100% correct on almost anything.
Yeah.
But you want to move closer and closer to real truth, objective truth, the truths of the universe, scientific study, the right thing to do, the answers, the best ways to do things in a system, a government, in the economy, in exploring space, in discovering cures for cancer, whatever it is. If you want to move closer to the truth, you must allow the scientific method to follow through. And the scientific method demands the challenge. And if you do that with speech, with conversation, the more you allow that in the public square, the more people come closer to the truth. Because not only is you're going to get the crazy guy, you're going to get the flat earthers, and you're going to get them saying the earth is flat, the earth is flat. You're going to hear their arguments, and it's only going to solidify your position, right? Unless you're completely ignorant about it, then maybe you might become a flat earther. But likely, more than likely, you're going to be like, those are dumb arguments.
Yeah.
Like, I've flown that way, or I was in the Navy and we sailed around that way and everything. It's like, no, these things aren't true, because all of these observed facts, and it ends up strengthening your position.
Yeah. Okay. So, in playing on that, like, controlled speech or whatever, or what we should allow or shouldn't allow under free speech. Obviously, we shouldn't allow people that are trying to sell a product to just egregiously like say that it's the end all be all, right? Like a snake oil salesman, like I guess I'll bring up Dr. Oz again, right? He got like sued because of some supplement or something that he swore by, and even though they had him on record,
raspberry ketones or something.
Yeah. I guess that would fall under the do no harm, because if you're claiming that and it hurts people, right, then like, I guess you should have the right to say that, but like, I guess you need to realize that there's consequences on the other side if you're making a claim like that, right?
Yep, that's civil.
But you could very well
that's
get
civil,
sued,
though.
right?
Yep, you get sued, and that's civil because it's fraud.
Yeah.
Because you you're making a claim. Free speech doesn't protect libelous and fraudulent claims.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just bring that up because like that's
unless you think it's true.
That's one of the tenets or whatever to like have controlled speech now, right? Is like people egregiously like making claims, or people that are making claims that they feel like aren't the expert or whatever that they think, right?
Yeah.
But how much do we let big pharma get away with like harmful speech with their stuff and unquestionable?
They paid the largest criminal fines in U.S. history.
Yeah, they have been sued, but it seems like that's slipping away
Well,
more and more.
That's like criminal.
Like you can't question big pharma now, right? Like
well,
that gets pretty dangerous,
Well, over the last few years, they were like 75% of the advertising budget.
Yeah.
Just big pharma alone was 75% of the advertising budget. So questioning them, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, like, we get shadow banned just for this part of the conversation.
I know, right? Just saying big pharma.
Just bringing up big pharma and everything like that. But you must allow that criticism. That you need to allow that questioning and like, hey, is this going to help me? Is this going to hurt me? I mean, because there's risk factors in most medications, period, and stuff like that. But you may say the benefit outweighs the risk. You have that discussion with your doctor, and he says,
I think it's dumb if somebody has like a valid enough question. Like obviously if I like hold up a phone and I'm like, where's the raspberries on it? That doesn't make any sense. But if I'm like, well, does the processor in this overheat? Is it going to burn me? And you're just like, oh, I'm sorry, we can't talk about that. Like.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to talk about that. That's what I'm talking about with big pharma, like it's like people have valid questions about stuff that may like endanger their life, I'm going to be vague enough to, not get outright canceled, but they can't even answer some of the most simple things or whatever, and you're not allowed. And, that's one of these tenets, like, oh, we got to protect, people from horrible misinformation, yet we can let other actors just be like, no, I'm sorry, I'm not going to answer that question. Like,
it's not free speech in that case. It's bought speech then, right? He who pays the most gets to control the narrative.
Yeah.
And everybody else is stifled. I'm not against people having advertisements. I'm not against people having big advertisement budgets. I'm not against them being able to advertise. I'm against them being able to silence their critics. You know what I mean? Stop the speech of others, compel speech of others, because what you're doing there is, especially like with the DHS working with these large tech companies and news organizations, what they're doing there is they're compelling and controlling speech. So how do we get closer to the truth if we are controlling and compelling speech?
Yeah. And
you must allow all speech. You must allow all speech. And people are like, oh, but what about child porn? That's not speech. Yeah. That is literally the abuse of an underage person who does not have our constitutional rights. They are protected. They are a protected class. Children are protected. And we protect them because they're the least of us. They do not have the rights. It's a very Christian, and I know that's going to make some people mad, but it's a very Christian idea, is that, what you do unto the least of these, you do unto me. And a lot of our laws are centered around that, is that, hey, we protect kids. We protect children.
That's not a Christianity thing. Like every reasonable religion, wants to protect their children. Every reasonable religion.
Okay, well, I'm just going to try to avoid being accused of hate speech, because there's definitely some major religions that.
Okay, maybe I shouldn't say every reasonable. Well, I don't know. When I say reasonable, like.
Yeah.
There is a lot of religions, that would want to protect their children. So I don't know that it's just a Christianity.
I'm not saying that. It's just that I can point to the verse in the Bible that, you know what I mean? Like, I can point to that verse and stuff and say that's, that's definitely a thing. It's very valuable in our values.
I don't know in their religious texts if they would like say that. I just feel like a lot of people that follow a religion you know, like
Are spiritual. Or,
yeah, like no, you don't do harm to kids. Like,
well, I think there's plenty of people that aren't religious that know you don't do harm to kids. You know? I'm not saying that like agnostic and atheist people are suddenly like are like burn the kids, you know.
Yeah.
But I do believe that.
what was that? Did you ever play that God game? It was one of those world building games. Where you play God. You ended up like feeding the kids to the like altar because they didn't do anything in the game. They couldn't build stuff, but you had to get them use them to get like spell points. I think that was pretty twisted.
A little dark.
Yeah.
A little dark side path there. But that's the whole thing is that's why that's illegal. Is that's exploitation. That's exploitation and abuse of a minor. That's not free speech, because people will try to say, oh, okay, well, I think it's free speech, and then people will point to that and say, well, if you outlaw and control that, then you have to outlaw and control hate speech. And I'm like, you are not abusing and causing harm to a person, like an adult like that. If an adult woman or man decides to get naked in front of a camera, you know, that's allowed. That you can do that as an adult. Okay? You can go and do that. Now, that doesn't mean you can do that in the middle of the town square, because why? Because you have kids. You have the innocent moving around in those public spaces.
Yeah.
Okay? So there's private spaces, there's nude beaches, there's pornography stores, I think most people probably get that stuff off the internet now. But there's that kind of stuff. There's these spaces that are known, like, you know, or strip clubs or something like that. 18 plus, right?
Yeah.
We understand these are adult only type spaces, and we differentiate that whether you're morally, you know, opposed to that or not. Those things are adult, you know, expressions. You know, and so I understand that, like, hey, I you know, I'm going to, even though I've really become, especially over the years, I've really become sort of this, man, porn is a very dangerous thing. Like, I think people have to be very careful with it, because I've just seen what it's done to people. Like, I have personal experience where I've seen what it's done to some people, their marriage and everything. So I'm always like, you know, there's a cautionary tale there with that. But I have to respect your right to, you know, drink yourself to death. You know what I mean? Smoke yourself to death. I have to, you know, like, to me, it's like, okay, that's your expression. I don't think it's a healthy expression per se. Maybe some psychologists might say in some certain scenarios it might be a healthy expression or something like that. But it'd be a hard argument. But it is your right. It is the adult right to do that. There's no exploitation there. Well, I would argue actually there is a lot of exploitation there, but it's an adult choosing to do that, and they're protected under the Constitution. They have constitutional rights.
Yeah.
Right now they have the right to vote. They have the right to engage in civil discourse. They have rights. They are sovereign. You know, so it's not the same thing as somebody saying something truly ugly or racist or anything like that, because we hear this whole racism argument. Everybody's racist now, and I really have a hard time with that. Most people I've ever met are not racist. They may have their biases, but straight out racist? No, I'd say it's actually pretty slim.
Well, I feel like,
especially nowadays.
Obviously, if somebody's taking action when they're like being outright bigoted, you know, like that's doing harm to others. But it's kind of condescending and racist in and of itself to like want to police people's speech, you know.
Yeah.
A certain minority or that can't handle that, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you're just gonna assume that, like, I guess I can't remember. When you assume somebody's like infantile or whatever, infantilize, yeah.
Yeah, we infantilize.
When we infantilize like other people or whatever,
yeah.
because we're
Yeah.
trying to do good
They
for
can
them, right?
Yeah, they can handle it themselves.
Yeah, and then the other part of like the whole we got to police hate speech and that, like, I feel like I'd rather like see it there and say you're stupid and shut up or whatever, then they're still gonna do it in the background, right? I think I'd rather like be able to see, like how far they're gonna go or that, so maybe we can take action if something, escalates to
Plus,
more reality or whatever.
Here's a big problem I've had with that. Like sunlight's the best disinfectant.
Yeah,
it really is. Sunlight's the best disinfectant, dude. If somebody gets on Twitter or Facebook or whatever or something like that, or standing next to you in the grocery line or whatever, and they're just making these ugly remarks, and you're just like, everybody is like scooting away from them, right?
Yeah.
Everybody that's reasonable just gets away from them. They're like a stink, and everybody moves away from them. When it comes to like being online and stuff like that, people might say something super hateful and everything, and people, the really hateful ones will kind of congeal on there or whatever, but everybody else is like, well, I know where they stand. And you know where they stand, and if they put it on the internet, the record's permanent. Now, I do believe in forgiveness. I do believe that you should have a path to redemption. So if somebody has said something in the past or whatever, and they show true remorse for it, and I mean they really said something, not this perceived crap, but they were being obviously hateful or whatever, and they just came out and was like, hey, look, I was young, I was stupid, I've grown up a lot, I've matured, I went and saw, went to a counselor and stuff, whatever, and they show true remorse and everything like that. Everybody's going to keep a side eye on them for a while.
Yeah.
And they're going to look at their actions, and they're going to see what they say from then on out. And they're going to go, okay, well, yeah, they changed. They bettered themselves, and I'm glad for them. Because I've met some very hateful people of just about every race or region of the world or whatever you can think of, okay? And that have said hateful, what you'd consider racist things about other races, and whether online or in person. And I always just kind of like that bigotedness towards another group. Sometimes it was the same race, you got you have North Korea, South Korea, right? They're, it's not exactly like they're best friends, but there's, even here in the United States, people, and it's okay to do that for some reason now, but, actually, I think it's always been okay, but people will really knock on Southerners. They'll, they don't mind being bigoted towards Southerners. There's nothing wrong with that in their mind. They're, them stupid rednecks and stuff like that. And I think a lot of it's because, really Southerners, don't have much of a voice. They really don't. These are not wealthy people. They don't have, very few of them are really wealthy. And as manufacturing moved out of the United States, it just got worse. And, they feel like they've been forgotten and stuff. And then you've got a whole class of people, the laptop class, that's always making them, the target for a bunch of stuff. And I'm like, well, that's bigoted. You're just being a bigot. I
guess playing on that and moving into another important part of the First Amendment is peaceable assembly, right?
Yeah.
So we could speak out and say that, for sure that January 6th was a mark on our history. It was a bunch of people being stupid and doing stuff, but that's doing harm. That's not peaceably assembling, but 5/9 insurrection, right?
Yeah. Yep.
When they burned, what did they burn down the church?
Well, they didn't burn it down. They set fire to it.
Yeah.
Or
even a lot of the courthouses and stuff that were attacked, or during other riots and that,
during that time period. Yep.
That's just as not okay. But I feel like what we're moving in is okay, well, this side did this thing, which is a horrible thing. We need to not allow them to ever assemble. We're just going to label them as domestic terrorists. If they have an inkling that they want to get together now, right? You know, because of one instance. No, we need to call out that instance. We need to call out like the stupidity of people, or the
Yeah.
disgustingness. What was it? One person died on January 6th.
No. Well, one person
died. They were shot. Crawling through a window.
A protester was shot.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't think it was a great thing for us to do, but I don't think that every time that side wants to, have their voice heard, in masses, that we need to be like, violence, this and that, and just close our eyes to like violence from other political like sides,
Political violence.
And the flip is true too, because we try to label some stuff sometimes like more, maybe not more recently, but. People speaking out in the past, that maybe.
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel like it's the same attitude that held back the civil rights movement, that created the Mao Revolution.
Yeah, I was going to bring China into it. Yeah, let's take away that peaceful assembly. And see if we don't end up like China, right?
That ended up that led to like a lot of death. That same attitude around the world and all these ideologies. It's an authoritarian bent that wants to put down an other. Okay. Yeah. Whether that other, they just want to find a group to hate and hate on, and it ends up getting very, very one-sided.
Yeah,
and you can see that right now.
You end up backing. I mean, both sides have done it. You end up backing them in a corner, and they don't have anywhere to go. Like, but what are we gonna like push for? Are we gonna have the government like kill its own people or whatever? Mm-hmm. Is that what we're pushing for?
Well,
this is the dangers of like messing with the First Amendment. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna call it out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because that's exactly what happened in China. I mean, they just ran over their own people with their tanks. When they were peaceably assembling at, I can't remember what that was.
Tiananmen Square.
Yeah, Tiananmen Square.
Yep. And what we have
because they're ultra MAGA or something, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
we need to stop that rhetoric, both sides. Playing into that rhetoric.
To be fair, right now, I don't believe that the right is ever saying don't give the left the right to peaceably assemble.
Yeah.
I don't believe that the right now is saying. I'm not saying they haven't said that in the past.
Oh, I know. I'm not saying that. Like it wasn't okay in the past, and it's not okay.
Yeah,
now
but in the last decade, I have not heard that from the right.
The other side gets power. It's not okay either time.
Yeah. And you to me, it's like you have the right now. You've got the right that's giving in and saying, like on Twitter, for example, when Elon Musk bought Twitter here recently, you've got the right saying, yeah, we don't care. Let them stay. Let them say whatever they're going to say. Yeah, we don't care. Yeah. I mean, and that's, the vast majority of the right. The left wants to lose their mind right now. And I say the left, but I think it's mostly just like the far extremist left right now.
Well, I think in the past it's always been your extremes.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. Yeah. Yep.
Listen to me,
Yeah.
Let's trample on the other side's rights, and whatever happens to be.
Yep.
I don't think it's the majority of the people, this much in, but definitely not down, to the direct center,
Yeah. And the rhetoric right now, and they have a right to say what they're going to say, but
I think both sides.
The rhetoric right now is really, really ramped up. You've got politicians out there saying that vote for us or you're going to lose democracy, and saying that they're all violent extremists over there. The Paul Pelosi attack, where the guy is like, from what we've seen so far in the information,
an illegal immigrant from Canada, so he doesn't have a skin in the game here, but he's ultra MAGA or something.
Yeah, he's an illegal Canadian immigrant in San Francisco that has BLM and gay pride flags in front of his house, and he's ultra MAGA, and he's a hemp jewelry maker. I'm like, okay,
it just sounds like a crazy person that did a dumb thing.
Oh yeah.
Just the same as
horrible thing.
The attack on Brett Kavanaugh, or the attempted attack.
Yeah. Yep.
On Brett Kavanaugh.
These things should just be condemned outright.
Yeah. We need to call out.
Yeah.
bad people and their bad behaviors, but we don't need to like, attach them, to a whole group of things, of people.
Oh man, but several of the mainstream sources right off the bat, I think it's probably, even more so right now because like the midterms are right around the corner.
Yeah.
But in their ideological bent, they immediately attached him as like a right winger. But here's the funny thing is
even if that's not true, it works for now, right? Maybe they get some more votes, like
exactly.
right before, and then afterwards, we're wrong, or maybe
yeah,
they don't even
exactly.
admit that.
It works for the next couple of weeks, right?
Yeah.
So the funny thing to me about that is that it seemed to me like the right was like, I'm going to wait and see.
Yeah.
I'm gonna wait this one out for a minute, and then we'll just, because I didn't see like right wing news sources say anything until a few days later, other than like, whoa, let's wait. I don't know what's going on here. There's some weird stuff. Then I started hearing some strange other stuff that we don't know the whole story. We're not going to know the whole story. But one thing I do know from the facts that I see is the man is mentally disturbed. He is not a politically driven person. He is mentally disturbed.
Yeah.
And I think he latches on to different ideologies. His brain may be out there in space. Maybe it's too much drugs. Maybe he's always had a mental illness. Whatever it is. I hope that Paul Pelosi, I'm not a fan of the Pelosi's, but I do wish him the best of recovery. I don't want somebody to get hurt. I do not condone violence. I do not condone political violence whatsoever. And most people come out and say the same thing.
Yeah.
But you hear a whole bunch of like, oh, that right wing, they're cheering it on and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, look, there is definitely people memeing and making fun of the situation for sure. Welcome to the freaking world.
Yeah.
Welcome to the internet. Before it was the internet, the TV would. I mean, the expression too soon, to joke about this thing, people will joke about everything. People will joke about dead babies, for crying out loud. I mean, there's nothing that's taboo. Matter of fact, one of the key elements of comedy is that you step near the edge. You step near the edge. You get people going, ooh, like you're about to offend, and then you switch it on them, That's actually one of the tricks to comedy. But if you deliver it right, it comes off, everybody laughs their butt off. But I think that where we're at now, the best idea is to just let people talk, let people communicate, let people engage, and let them yell it out on Twitter. I don't care. Let them get it out of their system. Let them respond. Let the facts come out. Yeah. We've lived in a couple of years. The last couple of years now has been full of a lot of lies, a lot of government-controlled narrative. We see that now. We know that. That's factual. We see that from the leaks from the DHS and the law, case. A guy sued one of the large tech companies or whatever. And a lot of stuff came out in discovery there. And basically what we're seeing is that the government's had their hands in this stuff. President Trump signed off. I'm sure this stuff probably started before. CISA, or whatever. Trump actually signed it, and since Biden's administration took office, they went full bore. They just full bore with it. And we know that the government's been doing this for a long time. It doesn't come as a surprise to anybody, but now there's hard evidence there. People really can't deny it. Well, they can. I guess they can. They can live in whatever world they want to, but the evidence is there. So now that we know the government's been infringing on people's individual rights and getting them banned and downranked and, pushing against the algorithm and just kind of ruining their ability to speak, really in the public space. And it is a public space. People are like, oh, it's a private company. No. You got to understand the protections that Twitter.
So it's a private company when your side, has a chunk of the town square or whatever.
Yeah. Well,
to be like they have the right to do whatever.
Yeah.
But when it changes hands, it's like, oh, we gotta get the government involved.
Well, my whole point is that
Yeah, I don't mean to
not
derail
only
you, but I just think that I'm just looking at the
not only was the
hypocrisy
government
there,
involved, yeah, not only was the government involved, but when I call you on the phone, I have a carrier, and they get the protections of a common carrier.
Yeah.
AT&T, Verizon, whoever, they cannot go in and say, okay, no, you can't talk to each other. You're not going to be able to make a phone call anymore. You're not going to be able to talk or anything like that. And they're not going to be held liable for the things you say. They're just a common carrier. Twitter, Facebook, that kind of stuff, they're getting the protections of a common carrier, but they're getting editorial powers as well.
Yeah.
And they're able to suppress speech. And I'm just like, no. This is a common space now. This is a common space. You are a carrier. That's all it is.
Yeah.
If you're getting the protections of a common carrier, that's what you get. And I think there's some cases that are going to be going through the Supreme Court here pretty soon. And I don't think I'm going to be too surprised at the outcome of them, because you and I know the internet's something new, everything, but you have to look at it in context. You got to say, okay, if people are having a discussion, there's groups of people having a discussion or whatever, there's this debate going on, whatever. Some idiot is going to get up in a debate and say a bad word from time to time.
Yeah.
There's going to be an idiot that jumps up in the debate and it has nothing to do with what's being debated about and say the world is flat.
Yeah.
Some idiot is going to jump up and say there's lizard people.
Yeah.
Some idiot is going to jump up and make all kinds of claims about you and the people on your side. And you can either choose to be so hurt and offended by it, or you can decide it's time to police speech. And when it's time to police speech, who gets to choose? Who gets to choose?
Well, I'm sure the people that want to police the speech want to, but are they always going to pass that purity test?
See,
Is something they say in the future that they think's okay because they got away with controlling that speech? They'll be like, "Oh, I'm good," because I'm not saying that. But who gets to come along and say, "Well, what you're saying"?
Well, I know that the left has had control of almost all of the major institutions for quite a while now.
Yeah.
And media institutions, educational institutions, so on and so forth. They have had that messaging power for a long time now. And we've seen what the effects of it are. As soon as Elon Musk, not a Republican, you know what I mean, decides to buy Twitter, there is a large backlash from the left's media institutions. We're not just talking about some idiots on Twitter that are complaining about it.
Yeah.
We're talking about the actual larger newspapers and people with a lot of power and money.
Well, you've had
are getting upset about it.
People like in the White House speak out against it,
Yep.
which is funny because I didn't hear people crying when Bezos bought WAPO. That was a very big town square, right?
Yep.
Well, I do hear people like fuss about Facebook, but Facebook is, is
Yeah,
Facebook.
Facebook is Facebook.
They definitely played a whole lot into that, the DHS's demands, along the way. But yeah, I guess one thing I want to mention to tie into all this is, stop weaponizing too. Stop weaponizing if you don't like something, I mean, I guess it isn't so much one side over the other, but yeah, that's a very dangerous thing. It's like forcing these companies, to curtail, or maybe we're going to burn them, down to the ground, or that's a very dangerous,
Oh yeah.
thing too, when we're trying to compel somebody's speech, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So
Yeah.
because it might eventually come for you, and you're well.
Well, that's what
it just the same,
That's my point. That's my point I was getting to, is actually that. So their perception is that, oh no, this right winger is going to get in charge of Twitter, one of their bastions of control and controlled speech, and people started to lose it. They just can't stand the idea that somebody, and I don't think he's going to really make it like a completely free speech platform. I don't even think he is. And
I'm not even sure it's going to be that much different.
I'm not sure that's going to be that much different either. But
it might, in the sense that it might be a little more better of a playing field. But it sounds like he's already maybe listening to the wrong people.
Yeah, that's what it appears like to me too. But I'm not freaking out one way or another about this thing. But I see, people freaking out, and I'm like, you're afraid that the other side might have a voice on one major platform.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, like I just the perception of the threat, and I'm sitting there thinking about it. I'm like, so you're freaking out because you know that speech has been controlled, and you're worried that somebody that doesn't share your ideology is now going to control it in a different manner.
Yeah.
And it breaks your brain. And that, to me, I'm just like...
That right there should be a red flag to
It's
them
a
that maybe
huge
we
red
shouldn't
flag.
do what we're doing,
Yes, exactly. It's like, oh, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Like, can you just live by the golden rule? I mean, can you just have that?
Is how I feel like should be, done for me. I don't know. I mean, what is the psychology there? I mean, I guess it's extreme selfishness or
Narcissism.
yeah,
It's narcissism.
inability to look outside yourself.
No, lack of self-reflection, man. Complete lack of self-reflection. And, I've had a lot of liberal friends and stuff throughout the years. And I think in this current climate, in this current environment, I think that what's happening is I do believe there's a big shift going on because the classic liberal free speech thought process is been eroded so much and everything that it's all about who controls the narrative now. It's more about like power and stuff. And I do believe that's the far left. I believe that is the kind of the the more crazier side. But it's weird because you see it reflected in the news and you see it reflected in politicians, but I don't think it's reflected in the general populace to that degree. You know what I'm saying? Like I know plenty of Democrat friends and stuff like that. They're not that way. They're not losing it or anything like that. And and there's those like the boomer generation, stuff like that. You get the older generation too that were just they just voted Democrat because that's what they were. And
is Orwell's 1984 or what's the book burning one? Fahrenheit 451. Is that not like required reading anymore in school?
I wonder.
And reflection on
Soylent Green.
Yeah, I mean, I lost my mind. I never in my life had I seen people call for any type of like censorship on, just some of the most basic stuff, until I guess Trump got in office or whatever, like.
Yep.
Oh yeah, let's fix this problem now and not think of. I'm sure that people have called for censorship for a long time of stuff that shouldn't even be touched, but
this is the modern Red Scare. Yeah. It's funny because it's like, people, the Red Scare, the Republicans are red and all that, but this is the modern Red Scare. Like oh no, that they might be a communist. It's McCarthyism. It's
so how did we
terrible.
break out of that in the past? We had a leader that was just like smart enough to like call people out on their BS, or I mean, I don't know enough about history, but or was it just that society actually corrected when they realized it's annoying how, or maybe they were able to self-reflect, right? I don't know.
Yeah, and we didn't have
before our time,
and we didn't have
roughly.
the internet back then, so
yeah, that's true.
So I think it was probably a lot easier to memory hole a lot of that stuff.
Yeah,
a lot of people don't know about McCarthyism. A lot of people don't know about that stuff, but it's a common sort of thing throughout history, common thread throughout history, this authoritarian desire to control others. And what it leads to death. It does. And what you really want to do is you just want to respect the other person's rights. Like you want to respect it. You don't have to agree with them. You can find them a disgusting individual. You can make funny memes about them, whatever. It's like live and let live, but don't control their speech. Do not censor them. Let them have their say. Let them say their vile things and stuff. and then everybody in the room can look at them and just kind of move away from them. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
you could call them out on their BS too. I mean,
Yeah,
have
you
every
can
right to
challenge
do
them.
it.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what you're
Or
into
just
and
say,
everything.
you know,
But getting into
I
arguments on the
respect that,
internet-
but you know, I think you're full of it. You know, like
Yeah, I wouldn't argue too much on the internet. That's a recipe for mental disease too.
yeah.
But all right, buddy, why don't you take us out of here, man? I mean, I think you know what you're gonna say, and lines right up with the subject matter, guys. Remember, compelled speech is not free speech. Free speech is the First Amendment for a reason. It is our most fundamental right. It's important to engage in conversation, and it's important to be challenged by that conversation.
Hate speech is free speech.
Hate speech is free speech, as much as and ugly as it can be.
Yeah.
Take us out, man.
But yeah, please, like and subscribe and share, comment, and as always, I ask you to think for yourself with anything important. And thank y'all. Do you have anything else, George?
Well, I don't hate anybody.
Yeah.
I don't hate anybody. I hate some ideas. I hate some things that hurt other people, but I don't hate anybody. So I don't care if you're a liberal. I've talked to people that were Antifa and ultra right. I've talked to KKK members. Over the years, I've talked to all these different people throughout my life, and I listened to them. Some of them had stupid and bad ideas, but I chose not to hate. And I think that's an important thing right now in the current environment. So, love you guys. Thank you for tuning in. Please tune in again, and if you could subscribe and share the video, because I think this is a very important conversation. Until next time, take care.